Okay, what do you think? Should we start? All right. Well, for those of you in the room, good job making it here to our semi-timely start. We'll blame the rain, but I hear it's going to clear up later today. Maybe we'll get a rainbow. But my name is Shelby Ellison. I'm an assistant professor in plant and agroecosystem sciences here at UW-Madison. I am super excited for all of you to be here to talk about cannabis today. That is a very unique experience, I think, for a lot of us in the room, and it's exciting that we're finally to a place where we can do this openly, engage with each other. But this isn't new, right? We've been doing this a long time. If you can see here, we have a couple of photos from the UW-Madison archives here, a radio station host on the top interviewing some folks in DeForest about their hemp mill and processing hemp fibers. And we also have down here the country's first pharmaceutical research station where they grew cannabis for the pharmacy program. Both of these show that we've been doing stuff in the world realm of cannabis for a long time. So it's exciting to be back doing this again in 2025. So let's see how these slides advance. Why is it doing that? I wonder. We're learning this is in my computer, so let's see. Even the arrow doesn't work. Thank you for someone. I have a Mac. Okay, perfect. So before we start, I want to thank a few people. This event I think is really significant. I work in CALS, in the Agriculture and Life Science College. You know, it's really applied. We do a lot of agricultural research. We work with a lot of growers. And part of the rationale for this conference is to try to bring people together from across campus, across the state, across the region, to talk and think more holistically about cannabis. So this event was brought together by several different schools on campus. So we have the School of Medicine and Public Health through the Tobacco Research and Intervention Center, the School of Pharmacy, of course, CALS, the School of Human Ecology, as well as the Global Health Institute. So whether it was financial resources or a lot of people time, those colleges and schools and institutes contributed a lot to making this event happen. The conference planning committee has folks represented from all of those schools and institutes. So this has really been a collaborative effort to make this happen. One thing I just want to say in addition to this is there are many of you who are not represented on this slide. So just so everyone kind of knows who's in the room, if you're not in one of these schools on the UW-Madison campus, but you're here at UW-Madison, can you raise your hand if you're not represented there? Okay. So within internal, okay, and then I know we have a lot of folks from various tribal nations, so can you raise your hand if you're coming from a tribal nation? Okay, we have a lot of private sector and small business owners here. Can you raise your hand if you're representing that? Hesitant hand. What about farmers and growers? All right. Okay. Students, graduate students, undergraduates, there's a couple. They're all in the hallway at the registration booth. They get to come in later. Also, it's pretty early for students. We all know that. And then, of course, hopefully everyone in this room is interested in cannabis broadly, and that's why we're all here, and that's why we're going to be having great discussions today. So I want to just set the stage for a few things about this conference, and that is, what are we talking about? Are we using the same language? So cannabis sativa is a plant, okay? That is the genus and species of the plant that we are talking about, cannabis sativa. Everything that distinguishes cannabis sativa beyond that has to do with legal definitions or how we talk about it in different contexts. So if we divide cannabis sativa up, we can talk about drug type cannabis that goes by many, many different names. You know, very often people refer to this as marijuana or weed. So drug type cannabis is separated from industrial hemp by this legal definition that we use, and that is the plant cannabis sativa containing less than 0.3% delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC. So this was as defined in the 2018 Farm Bill. That is the separation. It is a legal separation. It is not a scientific separation. You can cross a drug type cannabis plant with any hemp plant. They will make viable offspring. That is the species definition that I use in my rule book. So they are all the same plant. So this is the legal separation. When people say cannabis, to me, they're kind of talking about all of it. And you have to further refine what you're talking about if it is a psychoactive plant used for cannabinoids for medicinal purposes, recreational purposes, or industrial purposes. Currently, Wisconsin does not have a legal recreation or medicinal program as of today. That is all I will say with that. We do, however, operate under the USDA Domestic Hemp Production Program. So it is legal in Wisconsin as well as throughout the nation to grow industrial hemp. So cannabis containing less than 0.3% THC. That's the definitions we're using for this conference. So just when you talk about it, make sure that it's clear what you're talking about in which context. So cannabis is an awesome plant. Hopefully you all know this, but just some of you know about the medicinal side, some of you know about the industrial side. Cannabis can be used for 3 primary purposes. One is for the seed or grain. So cannabis is neat, it's a dioecious plant. There's male plants, female plants. So to produce grain, you need to have the male plant pollinate the female plant, produce the seed. The seed is really rich in both fatty acids and protein. It has a very good ratio of these omega-6 to omega-3s, which is in this very desirable heart healthy, body healthy range. So the grain is often used in human food products such as hulled hemp seeds, hemp protein powder, hemp oil, but it also can be used as an animal feed. We're going to be talking about this. Right now, you can't feed hemp to everything. You can feed it to laying hens, but not all animals can be fed hemp. What can we do to see how we can expand that market? Can also use it for various body products as well as a biofuel. Lots of opportunities for the hemp seed. Can also use the stalk or stem of a cannabis plant. This is what we think of when we think of traditional industrial hemp that was grown hundreds and hundreds of years for cordage and rope. So the hemp, the stalk there, it has 2 different fiber types. It has the bast fiber, which is on that outside. That is really long, strong fiber composed of cellulose and hemicellulose. That's the long, strong fiber. That's about 1/4 of the stem. And then the inside part is the hurd, which is a more woody, lignified. It feels more like if you were working with a tree. So traditionally, that long, strong bast fiber is what we've used in textiles and in ropes. But now we have new innovative products, biocomposites, paper products, fiber boards, where we can use both of these fibers as well as the hurd to build new biomaterials. So lots of areas to explore when it comes to that. So here you can see some textiles, shoes that have been used. This is a hempcrete wall. So hempcrete is hemp mixed with a lime binder that can form an insulative, non-weight bearing wall that is really gaining steam, and we're going to hear about that later this afternoon. And finally, of course, we have the flower. So cannabis, as I mentioned, being dioecious, male and female plants. So when hemp is grown for cannabinoid production, it is from the female flower. So we only use female plants in that context. And that is because on the outside of that female flower, there are these trichomes that look like little mushrooms. So these capitate stalked trichomes line those flowers, and those are the facilities that produce all of the cannabinoids. So cannabinoids like CBD, THC, CBG, you know the alphabet soup. So they're inside of that. That's also where the aromas are, the flavonoids, the pigment compounds are all housed in these little trichomes. And then the oils from these, the essential oils, are extracted and put into various products. So that can be things that you see in the store now, the various topicals, tinctures. The beverage market is ever expanding. Here you have an FDA-approved drug, Epidiolex, which is used for childhood seizure disorders. So there's actually FDA-approved products from cannabis that are extracted and used to treat or help reduce seizures that are approved. So seeds, stalks, and flowers. So many uses, but so little time. So now just setting the stage, we know what cannabis is, we know what cannabis can be used for. There's a lot of text on this slide. Why are we here today? So there was a group of us on campus that are passionate about cannabis in one way or another, and we wanted to find each other because we felt like we were all kind of working in our own little areas, and there's just so much need for collaboration. So last fall, we started getting together and talking about what we wanted to do when we formed a mission statement. And it's a lot. I think I'm just going to read it though, because I think it really sets the stage for what we're hoping to accomplish today. So our mission is to foster interdisciplinary collaboration that advances the understanding of cannabis through diverse lenses. We aim to bridge the fields of agriculture, history, design, anthropology, medicine, behavior and social science, impairment science, and public health to promote responsible, informed, sustainable, and equitable practices. Through rigorous research, community engagement, and educational outreach, we seek to explore the historical, cultural, environmental, and health-related impacts of cannabis. Our goal is to generate knowledge that informs public policy, contributes to sustainable agricultural practices, seeds entrepreneurial endeavors, advances medical treatments, and promotes public safety and well-being. And together we strive to make meaningful contributions to local, national, and global discussions and advancements on the role of cannabis in society. So all mission statements are wordy. This one is too, but it's because the plant has a lot to offer. But this is what we also seek for the folks in this room today. The discussions we have is how we can achieve this mission together. So a couple last minute things. Guidelines for the conference. We're talking about cannabis. You know, there's always something with cannabis. So the guidelines and goals of the conference are relatively straightforward. So we're here to listen to each other, to learn from each other, and while we're doing that, be respectful of each other. We have different viewpoints. You might disagree with something, but be respectful when you're having disagreements and conversations. Ultimately, to expand our networks, to learn about other folks working in this space, and hopefully to brainstorm some very actionable things for moving forward in this realm. So we have these SMART goals. So goals should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So keeping that in mind. Later, I have some sheets where hopefully over lunch we'll pass them out and people can brainstorm some ideas. We also have evaluations on the event to get your feedback of what can be improved. But ultimately, this is the goal of the conference, is to learn, expand your network, and brainstorm for the future. So I'm sorry that we don't have printed schedules. You all have seen this hopefully online. There is a barcode on the registration table where you can access the website. Or sure, take a picture of this now. We'll have this floating up, but ultimately today we're going to have a keynote speaker, kind of giving context to the whole conference. And then we have these 4 various panels, which are really diving into the different areas in cannabis. So we'll start out with health and medicine. Then we'll have some lunch where hopefully we can have some really engaging conversations. If you registered late, there is a chance we might not have lunch for you. I hope that is okay. There are tons of food options downstairs in Union South. So if we do underestimate the amount of lunch we needed, that's great. That means cannabis is popular, great. But there are lunch options downstairs. Certainly, we might not get to that point. But if you registered and you said you wanted lunch, you will get lunch. I promise you that. But we'll walk through here, get our lunch, and then there's some really nice rooms over there. Hopefully we'll have a sunny afternoon to engage in conversations. After lunch, we'll come back for our last 3 panels, the business and design panel, the agriculture panel, and the policy and regulatory panel. And then finally, in the first floor of this building, there is a nice little area where we can reconvene if we want to talk in a less formal setting. So, without further ado, we have some very important people. I see one person in the hallway right there too. So we are going to hear from the Dean of CALS. So got a little thing here. So Dean Glenda Gillaspy is the 14th Dean of UW-Madison CALS. Previously, she was a professor and the department head of biochemistry at Virginia Tech, where she led curricular reforms to support student success and launched a faculty mentoring program. Dean Gillaspy has also led several outreach initiatives for both high school students and undergraduates, including the National Institute of Food and Agriculture funded Research Experiences and Extension Summer Research Program. Dean Gillaspy also has come to the hemp field day, so I know she's a supporter of hemp. So I'll let her say a few words.
Right. Thank you. So I'm just here to give you a welcome and to say special things about the College of Ag and Life Sciences. But I want to start by saying it's really nice to see so many people from different fields all gathered around one plant species. I'm a plant biochemist, so that's super nice for me. And actually, while Shelby was giving that very informative introduction, it reminded me there's a lot in common with cannabis and poppy in terms of both the plant species and how federal law deals with a species, which is apparently not the way a plant scientist deals with a species. So I represent the college that's most tied to the land grant mission. I love bragging about our college, so I'm going to do that for just a couple of minutes. I take great pride in continuing the tradition of those land grant roots, which is really the way that we serve agricultural businesses and university research. This is a cycle of farmers asking questions of researchers, universities conducting experiments to answer those questions, and then professors sharing those findings with agricultural producers. And that's what land-grant universities were designed to do. One really interesting thing about that is this design came about during a very tumultuous time in this country during the Civil War. I'm always really impressed to think about the federal leaders at that time. Intense polarization where the country is literally at war with itself, but they had the foresight to invest in that national network. And this national network continues today. It gives me hope about our future that if we continue to flex that muscle, those powerful partnerships between state, local, and federal government, and then our universities and investigators like Shelby and others in the audience who are working to explore new territory. So let me say something about hemp. It's not a new crop to Wisconsin. I love the pictures from the archives. I'm going to check those out. Farmers were growing hemp here before we were a state. But our true hemp glory is during the Second World War, high demand from military for hemp-based products like rope and twine. I'm going to quote from an article in the Madison-based Capital Times from 1941. It notes Wisconsin produced more than 75% of the hemp raised commercially in the U.S. Think about that. That's a really big number. And then, I love this historical reference. We were referenced several times in the 1942 government-produced film Hemp for Victory. Raise your hand if you've seen Hemp for Victory. If you haven't, you should just look at it. It's on YouTube. It's like a great little time capsule of hemp growing and U.S. history. And apparently the rumor is for many years the federal government disavowed making the movie, which when you watch it, it's absolutely obvious they made the movie. So the end of the hemp story, as a military commodity, there were a number of market factors that changed the past for hemp after World War II. But when state policies changed a few years ago, my college and the Division of Extension started a new hemp program to address major questions and challenges of the state growers. Many states have done that, and it's really exciting to go out in the field and see the work that Shelby and others are doing. And what we see is a constant evolution of this program and continuation of partnership between my college, really smart and clever professors and students, and the land grant university as a whole. So I just want to end by thanking you. I get a chance to stick around for a little bit, and I hope you really enjoy your day.
All right, thank you very much. And then the last thing we have on the introduction and overview for today's event is we have Melissa Agard, who is the recently re-elected Dane County executive. So prior to her county elected executive position, Melissa served as the Dane County supervisor, state representative, state senator, where she also served as the state minority leader. Melissa is a graduate of UW-Madison and also a small business owner. And throughout her career, Melissa has championed issues such as affordable housing, environmental protections, public health, workers' rights, and dare I say, cannabis policy. So without further ado, Melissa.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Earth Day. It really is a pleasure to be able to start my day with all of you. As you can imagine, I've got a number of stops to make. But when invited to be able to come into a space and talk about cannabis, of course, I'm going to be there because for the last 10 years, this has been really flowing through my brain and my body and trying to figure out how it is that we overcome the challenges that we're facing here in the state of Wisconsin in regards to the lack of regulation and, frankly, criminalization of cannabis. It's not good for academia, it's not good for public safety, it's not good for public health, it's not good for opportunity and prosperity and personal liberties. And I've tried to talk about it in many different ways over the years with different people, meeting folks where they are at. And I really do believe that, when I first introduced this bill as a freshman in the state legislature, deep in the minority, I wasn't exactly sure what was going to happen. But the earth did not open up and swallow me down. In fact, it allowed me to go on an incredible journey with people across the state of Wisconsin, many of you who are here. So it was 2014 when I first put out the bill in the state legislature that actually had me trending on Reddit. And at that point, I wasn't exactly even sure what Reddit was. But we introduced a bill to fully legalize cannabis for responsible adult usage in the state of Wisconsin. It was the first time that bill had been introduced. And I wasn't even sure what my Democratic colleagues were going to think about this. I wasn't sure what the state was going to think about it. I thought I might lose in my next election, but I think this is a vitally important conversation that we have. But the trajectory has been nothing but up, I think, for the state of Wisconsin and clearly across our country and across the globe. Think about what the landscape of cannabis policy looked like in 2014 and what it looks like now. When I first introduced this piece of legislation, people would whisper in my ear, "Hey, I like that stuff you're working on." And now I walk through grocery stores and people say, "You're not in the legislature. Who's going to do this for us? Come on. Our kids and our community deserves this." People are not afraid to have conversations out front. And that's because it is really clear that legalizing cannabis will help address economic insecurity for people who are here in our community, advanced opportunity, address egregious racial disparities, allow us to be creative and gritty when it comes to science and facts, and move forward the pendulum to address public health issues. I have long believed that it is vitally important that our laws reflect the values and the realities of our community and that of our bosses, the people who elect those who are making policy decisions. And I know many of you in this room feel the same way. It's complicated. I'm the mom of 4 sons, and one of the things I like to say is most decisions I make don't even make the 5 of us happy in my house. And there's only 5 of us. So when you're thinking about a complicated policy like cannabis legalization, I know we're not going to make everyone happy regardless of where it is that we land, but we're going to move that ball forward, and we cannot allow the status quo to paralyze us. But we also need to be honest with one another about how it is that we're going to cross this finish line. I very much believe the genie is out of the bottle. Wisconsin may be the last state in the nation to pass this policy because we are an upside down world, but I do feel like here in Wisconsin, we're starting to have more elected officials that are listening to the people on the ground that know the facts, the scientists, the users, the pharmacists, the doctors, the farmers, the Main Street businesses. Their voices matter in this conversation. And ultimately, the data is clear. As we look at our neighboring states, they haven't fallen off the map. They are reaping economic benefits from the legalization of cannabis. They are able to address racial disparities. They are making their communities safer, more prosperous, and more fair. Here's an example. Many of you may have heard about this. When I was in the legislature, I reached out to the folks down in the great state of Illinois, and I asked them, because when I go through parking lots in Illinois of dispensaries, I see an awful lot of Wisconsin license plates. I was curious. And in fact, Illinois is one of the states that does track where purchasers are coming from. Not all states do that. And in 2022 alone, Wisconsin residents spent $36 million in tax revenue in the state of Illinois. So that's not purchases, that's not the economic stimulus. That's not the wages to the businesses. That's not the farmers who are benefiting from it. That's not the people who are honoring their personal liberty. That's just the tax revenue. And that's all going to Illinois. Those are dollars you all earned that are being invested in another community. We deserve to have that here. And you think about how many people are going to Michigan and Illinois, still getting on airplanes and flying to Colorado and California. We are really losing out. Those are dollars that could be invested in our educational institutions and our kids and our future and clean air and clean water. And we're not able to do that right now. And you think about the time that's associated with people going to other states and the fear that people have when they're bringing what some consider their medicine back into the state of Wisconsin. That's not a way to live. We're behind the 8 ball. So I very much know that cannabis policy isn't simply about economics. It's about public safety, it's about public health, it's about community, being able to listen to one another and figure out how to solve big problems and move our community forward. And I know that we need to do this in a responsible and gritty manner. And that includes being honest about brain development and how it is that cannabis impacts our bodies and our world, and especially our kids. I'm a mom of 4 boys. Imagine in 2014, when I put this bill out and my 2 oldest boys were in high school, how within a 24-hour period their life changed. They went from being just 2 boys at school to the next day, oh my God, your mom's the pot lady, right? It makes conversations tricky. But they are important conversations for us to have. And scientists play a vital role in making sure that we get this right. We all know that research shows that our brains are continuing to develop into our mid-20s, and I know that legalization needs to go hand in hand with education, prevention, based in science and facts. We need to ensure that young people and frankly users of cannabis products across the board, regardless of their age, understand the risks that are associated with cannabis, because there are some. You know, you drink too much water, you can get pretty sick from that also. We need to wrap ourselves in the facts and the science. And that means that we need to be able to research and be curious about this plant. And for too long, that has been tricky. If we really want a system that is going to work, that is going to include the very necessary safeguards that we all deserve, public awareness campaigns, facts, understanding what regulations will make a difference, how it is that we prioritize health and safety, we need to be able to research this plant. And we need to be able to robustly research this plant. So let me be really clear. With our current system of prohibition in the state of Wisconsin, there are no guardrails for that regulation. And in fact, we are a less safe state because of the lack of regulation and the fact that we do not have a law on the books in the state of Wisconsin. In 2023, I traveled around the state of Wisconsin in something that I call the grassroots tour. And I was able to visit farmers and manufacturers and distributors and users and skeptics from across the state of Wisconsin, thousands of miles, so many conversations with people, and it was eye-opening. There were a few times when people came forward and they were afraid, and they were there because they were ready to tell me that I was, off on a faraway planet. But after our conversations and actually listening to a brief 45-minute conversation about what it is that I have learned in my time working on this piece of legislation, people walked away with a little more curiosity and a willingness to be able to move forward. We can't just assume that because someone is of a party or lives in a certain community or has a certain profession, that we can't engage in conversations with them. In fact, authentically listening and talking and being gritty, opportunities just like what you are experiencing today are going to help us be able to march forward and create a more fair and just community. At the end of the day, the reoccurring theme that I heard from all of these stops and conversations were really regulate us. Business owners saying they wanted to be regulated, farmers saying they wanted to be regulated. That's something that's pretty uncommon in government, but people want it because they want this industry to be able to be safe and to thrive. They knew by coming forward and saying that and raising their hands, how can I help? What can we do to make this happen? That regulation and legalization will actually create a safer Wisconsin for all of us, regardless of what strain of cannabis plant that you are looking at. Consumers deserve that. Our future deserves that. Science deserves that. And I know that we also need to be really mindful of the barriers to the research that you need to do, that we need you to do, that exist because of where we are in time. As long as cannabis continues to remain federally classified as a Schedule I, institutions like this on this campus are really limited on what it is that you can do. And that's why efforts to reclassify cannabis at the federal level have been so crucial and so exciting. We're, as I said, in the upside down world. It's pretty unpredictable where it is that we are. But I was grateful when President Biden started us moving forward to reclassify. And I am hopeful that we're going to be able to get there. We need to get there because it will help advance science. It will inform public policy for policymakers like myself, and it will help us continue to be innovators and believers. It will allow us to be gritty. It will help us lift up our agricultural heritage. It will help us invest in medicine and taking care of vulnerable people within our communities and really frame these discussions and our decisions in public health. And we need to also remember that over 70% of the people in the state of Wisconsin, again, my bosses as an elected official, support legalizing cannabis for responsible adult usage. It's a no-brainer when it comes to policy. If a politician in Wisconsin wins at a margin of 55%, it's considered a landslide. 70% of the people in Wisconsin support legalizing cannabis for responsible adult usage. Taxing and regulating similar to how we tax and regulate alcohol. This isn't a partisan issue. It's a Wisconsin issue. It touches every single person's life because all of us love someone or is someone who has been impacted by the prohibition, the harms of prohibition of cannabis in the state of Wisconsin. And I know that we need to align our policies with the will of the people. It's inscribed on the ceiling of the governor's conference room. The will of the people should be the law of the land. There's no easy button when it comes to policy writing. We don't want a bill that is going to slide through the legislature really quickly without a gritty conversation, without a robust conversation from many angles. When that happens, it's not good for any of us. But folks, we've been talking about this for over 10 years in the state of Wisconsin. The bottom has not dropped out in states that have legalized. We need to do this in a thoughtful and balanced and just way. And we need to be honest about what it is that our community deserves. So during my journey to craft this legislation, and it changed over the years, because over the years I heard new things and science was catching up, and it was vitally important that I not just drop the same piece of legislation time after time. One of the things that I said when I was out in the communities and was what was trending on Reddit all those years ago was the fact that I said the most dangerous thing about cannabis in Wisconsin is that it's illegal. And I still believe that to this day, even though that bill has changed. I believe that to this day. We know that when we come together and when we're curious and we share space, even if we have some skepticism, and I welcome skepticism, if it is with curiosity, with compassion for what can be, and with an eye towards opportunity, that we will be able to lead forward in what it is that the Wisconsin idea planted in our state generations ago. Future generations deserve that. And it is so impressive that these rooms continue to build. My understanding was there were more people that wanted to be here, but you reached capacity. That means next year There's going to be another conference likely. I know you have to recover from putting this one together. But there are people that want to be at the table. They want to be partners on how it is that we continue to move this forward. And I'll say, when I was making the decision on whether or not I stay in the Wisconsin State Senate, a place that I loved and I was growing and being able to impact the community, or considering running for Dane County Executive almost 600 days ago, it was torture. Which path was I going to take? But I knew at the end of the day that the seeds that I had planted when it came to policies that mattered the most to me, including cannabis policy, were going to be tended to by new people. And that's very important, that we continue to grow our bench and continue to grow our advocacy. So I know that the bill that I've been championing been a champion for in the state legislature, the governor wrapped his arms around it a handful of years ago. That was a thrilling call for me to be able to receive. And there are many people in that Capitol that are excited to be able to be the voice of this legislation. But now, as the county executive here, I know that when this bill moves forward in the legislature, whether it looks like the one I introduced or changes even more, that we are going to be a county that is going to lead nationally with this policy. I look forward to that. I'm not done with this, and I know you all are not either. We need to continue our dialogue so that we can come up with a solution that lifts up and meets the needs, as well as addresses the fears of people all across the state of Wisconsin. One that addresses economic opportunity, that will keep us safe, that will invest in our communities, and will enhance and lift up our personal liberties and freedom. That's the Wisconsin way. That's the Wisconsin idea. So I want to thank all of you for being here, for being ambassadors for this conversation, and for the work that we all need to continue doing when it comes to addressing the prohibitions of cannabis and the investment in science, in our future, in knowledge for future generations. Here in Wisconsin and in Dane County, I very much believe in operational excellence. I believe in the best intentions that we bring to the table, holding ourselves to a high standard, integrity, and being community focused, keeping our community centered in the work that we are doing and leading with what is possible, not with what it is that we are afraid of. So go forward, continue solving the world's problems. We are in this together. And what a lovely day to be talking about this vibrant and complicated plant here on Earth Day. Shelby, thank you for everything that you do and for inviting me to be here. Thank you.